We're back at bigleaguepolitics.com. Our guest today is in the center of national controversy. He is the writer, Dr. Jerome Corsi. You've seen him in the headlines. Jerry, thanks for being here and joining the show today.
Glad to be with you. Thank you.
Now, Jerry, tell us what is going on with Robert Mueller. He is targeting you, and you are firing back.
Well, what I know is that Robert, I got a phone call. I had to throw my phone to someone here to handle it. Otherwise, it'll keep ringing throughout the interview. Look, I spent 40 hours with Mueller Special Counsel, 6 sessions over 2 months. And it was a horror show. I mean, I've given you a day-by-day explanation of it in this book, Silent No More, which is on Amazon, but we're going to get out the ebook and the audiobook right away so people can read it immediately. I don't want to wait for the hardcover to be available. My publisher would make more money. I would too with the hardcover, but I don't care. I want people to be able to read it right now. At any rate, at the end of all this, they blow it up. I'm not even able to give them what they want, which is some link to Assange that I supposedly had. And they blow it all up. And now they throw me out. They lecture me. I mean, they've been threatening me with going to prison the rest of my life from day one. This whole thing is a Gestapo show. And I've written this book, and I'm going public because I don't want any other Americans to have to go through this. This is not America. This is the USSA. This is Russia, Soviet Russia. This is the KGB. This is the Gestapo. This is, feel like I'm a American prisoner of war in the Korean War with North Koreans doing an inquisition. I don't think any American should be subjected to what I went through. It's wrong. I think it's got to be exposed. I think we got to change the system.
Jerry, what are they trying to pin you for?
Well, again, you'll have to ask them. But what it fell apart on, especially called 2 sessions. First session, I went to the grand jury. They were all happy with my testimony. Everybody shook my hand. It was terrific. Second one, they blew it up, and I'm going to prison because the second session, which they had not asked in the first session, was how I knew in July and August 2016 when I took those 25th anniversary trip with my wife and family to Italy. And I believe on an airplane flight, I figured out that Assange had Podesta's emails. This was after the 22nd of July when Assange had dropped the emails on Debbie Wasserman Schultz. So the special prosecutor was determined that I knew Assange, which I did not, never talked to Assange, had no communication with Assange ever, or that I had someone who knew Assange, which I don't, connected me to Assange, which didn't happen. And since I couldn't provide them that name, they wanted to go from, it was Roger Stone to Jerry Corsi to Assange, and then Roger Stone to Steve Bannon, Trump, and that was their collusion. I was a disconnect. I ended their investigation because I couldn't go from me to connecting Roger to Assange. It didn't happen. And so that was their big blow up. And it was what convinced me that they, they had a predetermined agenda, They were looking for testimony to fit into their predetermined prosecutorial theory, which was politically driven. They hated me. They made it clear to me they hated me, hated my research. I thought I was probably needing psychiatric care because I'm a conservative, and coming from Harvard University, Jesus Christ is still my personal savior. I didn't go to Harvard for religious conversion. I'm sorry. I forgot to take the atheist indoctrination course in the political science department in 1968 when I began my graduate work. Damn fool not to take that course. Would have put me in line with everybody else.
Yeah, you'd be powerful now. Yeah.
So what's your next question?
Well, Jerry, you today have filed a criminal complaint against Robert Mueller alleging that he tried to coerce you to lie. Tell us about this.
Well, it's the entire, and That's why I'm so intent on saying to everybody, read this book, Silent No More. I think it's going to be a classic because it puts you, it's first person next to me. I'm not trying to pitch the book, okay? I'm trying to say what I went through and trying to tell people was a horror show because, okay, so day one, I handed over to the prosecutor all my computers, my laptops, my email accounts, my cell phone, everything. I handed them my Verizon accounts. Verizon wouldn't even give me my phone calls. I gave them the special prosecutor to go get them. Okay, so here we are. And first day, I couldn't reload. I had a time machine. I had Apple computers. I had a 17-inch Apple MacBook Pro, which I liked because I liked the 17-inch screen. And Apple quit making that size. So I nursed that computer. I had to replace the motherboard. I had to replace the keyboard broke. I had to replace the whole case. I had to get a solid state hard drive. I did everything I could to make that computer limp along. And by the end of it, it was barely functioning. I put it in a drawer and sometime in 2018. And my wife said, throw it away. It's junk. Well, I guess I have a tendency to save junk. So I saved. I figured this was the only record I had of 2016 in that time machine. So I kept it. Now, when the special prosecutor called me, I decided that I better turn it over in the state it was the last day I used it. Then I'm thinking I'd erase things, and I didn't think I could make the time machine work. It might destroy the whole computer to reload, to get the time machine to record its current state. So I just turned it in. First day they say to me, did you want to go to see Assange, or did you want to send anybody to see Assange? I said, absolutely not. So they all stand up, they walk out. I'm in this little interrogation room, conference table. There's 3 of the prosecutors and 6 to 9 of the FBI. It's like an army of these guys, me and David Gray, my attorney. No, we have to, it's an unmarked FBI building. They drive you to it. You have to check in your cell phones and your laptops and no electronics. And they all parade out and are gone for an hour. I'm left to pace around this room and count how many light fixtures are in the room. Well, they got this little globe thing over here that's watching me, and a whole bunch in the other room having to watch me. Okay, so this is the kind of experience it is. And I said, wait a minute, I hadn't seen my 2016 emails. Well, there were 2 emails I forgot. One was to Roger Stone had sent me this email on July 25th, 2016, I believe it was, saying somebody's got to go see Assange. And I passed that on to Ted Malloch. I gave it about 10 seconds thoughts. I said, Ted from Roger, Jerry. Boom, it's forwarded. And then in August, when I was still in Italy, Joseph Farah was my boss at that time at WorldNet Daily. Was mad because none of us were going to see Assange, and he knew under New York Times v. U.S., the Pentagon Papers case, we could do it. So I said to Farah, send me an airplane ticket to London, and I'll go see Assange. Well, I forgot about those. So the special counsel let me go home for 10 days, review my emails. I came back. I amended my testimony to say it was obviously wrong. I was willing for Malik to go to see Assange. I was willing to go see him myself. It just never happened. Mm-hmm. Now, when it all blows up in October and they're throwing me out and saying they're going to have a plea agreement with me, with the prosecutors in the plea agreement, which I didn't ask for, they offered me that plea agreement to get me off the media. They charged me with 1 count, which was the testimony I gave on the first day without acknowledging that they had allowed me to amend that testimony. Now, I consider that to be fraudulent. That's another thing. I would not swear in front of a judge that I had knowingly and willfully supplied the special prosecutor and the FBI with information I knew to be false with the intent to deceive them because I had not done that. So this whole plea agreement was fraudulent. I never asked for it. I got off the media for a few days to consider it. I told them I wasn't going to do it. I announced that in One American News about a week ago today. And so today, now that we've had a little bit of time and explaining this to people, I instructed my attorneys to prepare this criminal complaint, which we filed this morning with the Department of Justice, with the Acting Attorney General Whitaker, with the Inspector General of the DOJ Horowitz, and with the DOJ Office of Professional Responsibility, accusing the Mueller and his prosecutorial team of my experience is the basis for concluding it is a political investigation, and it is criminal in nature. They're forcing testimony. They are using a whole series of investigative techniques and interrogation techniques, which I consider to be unethical and criminal. And I want Mueller replaced and put in place someone who will do a fair job. Mueller was completely uninterested in all the data I had with regards to Hillary or how the DNC. He didn't want to hear any of that. All these prosecutors wanted to hear was what the piece that they were looking for to fit in the puzzle that they predetermined. It was not a puzzle I thought made any sense at all. But they wouldn't listen to me why I didn't think Russia hacked the emails. I think that's a damn fool idea. I'd be happy to explain it to you.
Well, this is great news, Jerry. Jerry, when the New York Times was trying to push the narrative that you were talking or you were flipping or something, I said there's no way. Jerry Corsi's a fighter. He's not flipping.
I'm not flipping anybody. Look, I'm driving up to NBC. I'm going to interview on NBC with Anna Schechter. You call her up and ask her. And I got one following this at ABC with Alexandra Dukakis. Okay, they're fighting over who was going to have the first one. And so I'm on, we're pulling in. Traffic was tough in Midtown. They sent a limo to get me. And so we're struggling to get there on time. I'm pulling up finally on 49th Street to the NBC studio entrance. And David Gray, my attorney, calls me. He says, "Don't stop. Drive ahead." I said, "David, I got this interview. They're waiting in the lobby here." I said, "Just do what I'm telling you." I said, "Okay, fine." So I had the limousine driver drive up to Fifth Avenue and turn right. And he said, "They've called me up. If you get off the media, they will give you a plea deal. And they say it's no prison time. And your wife doesn't want you blowing it by giving the interview." Well, I'm saying my wife's crying. I had to explain to children and grandchildren, everybody else, the dogs, his daddy going to prison, his grandpa going to prison. So I said, okay, well, listen to their damn fool offer. And their offer was a damn fool offer, and I'm back on the media. They can go to, well, I'm not going to say what I was about to say, but you know what they can do with that plea agreement. Yeah. They can do with the entire investigation. And I'm out here to tell the world.
Jerry, there's no evidence that the Russians gave Julian Assange those emails. Who do you think gave Julian Assange the emails?
Well, I mean, from what Julian Assange has said, my best guess is, and he's hinted at it, my best guess is it was Seth Rich. And that I've always considered it ridiculous that his murder was not fully investigated, and we can't get the investigatorial reports of the Washington Police Department. And from the forensic work, which I consider to be credible, not this damn fool, joint intelligence assessment, which is a bunch of garbage, to use a French word, is ridiculous. That's nonsense. I mean, it's so politically motivated. I can't stand it. And Trump's right. Nobody's ever seen that DNC email server. At any rate, except for Debbie Wasserman Schultz and the DNC, they won't release it. I got a whole investigation going on here that the Russians stole the email. Julian Assange says it's nonsense. Under New York Times v. U.S., I wrote my dissertation on the Pentagon Papers case. 1972, I wrote my dissertation. That case was 1971. I knew at the time it was very important, and that I focused on it at the time. Assange could come back here, be given immunity, and if the whole predicate of this Mueller political investigation is that the Russians stole the emails, well, Assange has the best evidence. And if he says it isn't the Russians, why doesn't somebody damn fool get Assange over here and say, show us your proof?
So do you think
that's where I'd start an honest investigation.
Yeah. Do you think President Trump should pardon Assange then?
I think he should give him immunity. Because under New York Times, look, if you know the New York Times v. Sullivan, v. U.S. case, there's another case v. Sullivan, v. U.S., Daniel Ellsberg 1971, working for the RAND Corporation, which was a government-sponsored research company, closely aligned with the Pentagon and the CIA. They did a secret study called the Pentagon Papers. He was working at RAND. RAND had a copy in a file cabinet that was locked that Ellsberg had access to. Ellsberg had been in Vietnam for the Pentagon. He knew McNamara. He read this study, and he knew the study proved that from the beginning of the Vietnam War under Lyndon Johnson, our government knew it was fraudulent. So, this is 1971. Ellsberg takes this document and he copies it on a Xerox machine, and he says to the world he's got it. And he gets copies of it to the New York Times and to the Washington Post, both of whom have reporters that connect with Ellsberg, and both papers are going to publish. Well, the Justice Department comes in and says, if you publish, we have a temporary injunction on you, temporary restraining order. And the case gets to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court decides the 6-3 vote under the First Amendment that those papers could publish the Pentagon Papers, even if they were stolen, even if they were classified material, provided the newspapers didn't steal the material. And it's the same case here. Julian Assange didn't steal the DNC emails. He's in receipt of them. And under New York Times v. US, 1971, he had a right to publish them, which he did. He's not a criminal to be in possession of stolen emails under that court case, unless, of course, you're Robert Mueller or the current Justice Department, which is a criminal Justice Department, also politically motivated under Rosenstein and Comey and these other criminals
right
that are running it.
Do you think Whitaker is a good guy? I mean, is he turning things around?
I don't know. Jury's not out on him yet. He's brand new. Everybody who gets into that position cowers before bows down at the altar of political correctness and allows Mueller to go on with these crimes. I'm hoping he has, and that's why we sent in this complaint. I'm hoping Whitaker's an honest guy. I don't know that he's an honest guy. I'm going to find out.
Mm-hmm. Now, there's a criminal complaint from you now to the DOJ against Robert Mueller. There's a whistleblower saying that Robert Mueller lied to the Senate Intelligence Committee about the scope of his surveillance activities when he was FBI director. There's a whistleblower in a case in Tennessee saying that Robert Mueller framed a right-wing man on a gun charge. Even the mainstream media now is looking at Robert Mueller's record, and they're saying this guy really doesn't have that much credibility. Where do you see this Mueller thing going? I mean, wouldn't it be smart for him to just call this Russia thing off right now and blame Hillary and Podesta for it?
Well, Mueller's a criminal. How about the Uranium One trip he took for Hillary that he covered up on, taking uranium to Russia during the Uranium One deal? I mean, I'll list you a dozen things. This guy Mueller's a cover-up artist for the deep state Democrats. Yep. And if he goes on pretty far, what I'm calling for, and I think Mueller should have ended this damn thing when he began it, because it wasn't an honest investigation from the begin with. They didn't look for the facts to develop their hypotheses. They had this predetermined Russian collusion. I want to say a word I shouldn't say, and you would, I think, you'd probably figure out what I was going to call it. And they decided to push this narrative because it was a narrative. Hillary Clinton and John Podesta, as best I can figure out, today, is that Podesta knew his emails were breached in March 2016. DNC didn't tell anybody until June 2016. In that period of time, I'm willing to bet that Hillary and Podesta realized that Peter Schweitzer, who I consider to be a brilliant researcher, was on to this, from Russia with money, and he had it scoped out before any of the rest of us did. And I didn't appreciate it fully, maybe even just recently, that he was right, that Schweitzer was right. Podesta and Hillary have been making millions of dollars selling U.S. military technology to Russia under this reset. It shows up in the Panama Papers. It shows up in before I was done researching that in October, I had people in banking sending me things in Russian, showing me how the Russians laundered money to Podesta and to Hillary. And so they figured March figured we better get out ahead of this Russia story.
Mm-hmm.
They decided to blame Russia on Trump. Well, Russia hacked the emails. Okay, now they, in between March and June, they get this CrowdStrike company. Now, CrowdStrike is funded by Eric Schmidt. And Eric Schmidt happens to be doing the get out the vote work for Hillary. Okay, and they get over and they send this DNC server to CrowdStrike. CrowdStrike says, oh, it was Fuzzy Bear and Cozy Bear and Rosy Bear and XYZ Bear and Bear Bear in the metadata. Well, that's all nonsense because, first of all, nobody's seen the server. And secondly, Julian Assange of the Vault 7 dropped CIA internal papers which demonstrated the CIA can hack a database and make it look like all Fuzzy Bear and Cozy Bear and all these other bears. Okay, now the legitimate analyses that have been done, I think, of the theft of the emails, which is a different theft than the Guccifer theft. It was a different computer system that Guccifer tapped into, Guccifer 2, happened in such an interval. This was a study done by a group of former NSA. It was published in The Nation. And a guy named Forensicator, whoever he is, published 2 studies I thought were brilliant, in which he demonstrated the length of time in which these emails were stolen out of the DNC server necessitated it was an inside job done with a thumb drive. Now, I tried to explain this to Mueller. They're absolutely uninterested. Couldn't care less, which convinced me they were on a political mission. Because if they'd been honest, they wouldn't want to know how I knew that. And I had printed out hundreds of pages to show them from this source, who I call LH, who was married to a former NSA guy. Finally, she made some comments on her blog. I figured out who she was and actually talked to her ex-husband, who said he thought she was schizophrenic. He recommended I don't talk to her. I said, well, you might be schizophrenic, but she's got some pretty damn good information, because everything she's told me about how the Democrats created this system back to a guy named Zach Exley, who nobody's heard of, except for LH and me, was the guy who was the one who came up with the Democrats' idea to begin running computer systems to do their data analyses for presidential elections. If you bothered to study the DNC system, it was obvious that there had been multiple breaches of the DNC during the 2016 campaign. And Guccifer 2 hacked a system called the NGP ban system, which only had donor data in it and voter data in it. But don't imagine that Robert Mueller cares, because he doesn't. He's got his own theory, and he's got the CIA. He's going to roll that out in court, because anybody who doesn't believe the CIA is a conspiracy theorist. And this thing, I wanted to blow the whistle on it. That's why I had Larry Klayman and David Gray write this 70-page demanding a criminal investigation, filed it with the acting Attorney General Whitaker, with Inspector General Horowitz, and with the Office of Professional Responsibility. It's why I went public with it, got it every news agency that I can figure out who's interested in it on the planet.
Well, we are definitely interested, Jerry. I want to ask you, because as Mueller started to be discredited, all of a sudden we saw this Michael Avenatti guy with his client Stormy Daniels, and it all kind of led to this Michael Cohen plea deal. And in the sentencing memo, there's no evidence whatsoever that President Trump told Michael Cohen to lie to Congress. They got Cohen on lying to Congress, same thing they got Flynn on when they set up Flynn. Strzok and Yates, set him up in the White House. Where do you see that Cohen thing going?
Well, I mean, I don't know what I've known Michael Cohen casually over the years, and it's unfortunate. I have to agree with Donald Trump. I don't think he's all that bright. And at any rate, I don't know why he caved in the way he did. I think General Flynn is a great American hero, and I understand they pressured his son and lost his home. I might lose my home. I don't know. But I'm telling you, they can take that plea deal and they can put it where the sun doesn't shine.
I love it.
I ain't signing it.
Yeah, and those are all earthly possessions, Jerry, but you're standing for truth. Tell the people, where can we find more about what you're doing and how we can help you out?
Well, CorsiNation.com is where my website is, and I really want people to read The Silent No More. That's why, the publisher would make more money if we only sold the print edition, but it won't be available until March. So, at my insistence, Post Hill is getting out probably this week, maybe the end of the week, an ebook edition. And today they are auctioning the audio rights so we can get it out where people can read it and hear it now. We'll make a lot less money doing it that way, but I don't care. I wanted to get out. And when people read what I went through, it's written firsthand at the time, like you were there with me, sitting beside me going through this. I don't think any American can read that and not want Robert Mueller examined and his whole team, Zelensky, Ree, Goldstein, the whole bunch of them, political hacks who committed crimes. My end of my complaint says I'm convinced this is a continuing coup d'etat to politically oust Donald Trump from a 2016 election that they legitimately won, and to cover up the crimes of Hillary and all these others, including Peter Strzok and a whole bunch of his buddies who I don't know yet whether Whitaker has the guts to investigate.
Mm-hmm. Well, Jerry, you are a brave man, and we look forward to much more of your investigative reporting during the 2020 re-elect. And I don't think there's going to be any Russian collusion in 2020, just as there was no Russian collusion in 2016. Jerry Corsi, I'll give you the final word. What do you want to tell the people?
I don't even like Russian salad dressing. I mean, that's Russia, 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 Russia. The Democrats used to love Russia, but then it didn't go communist anymore. So now they hate Russia. You go figure it out.
Jerry, thanks for being here.
My pleasure.